Hello, friends, and we're glad you're back for episode number 42 of No Putts Given, and we've got a great debate today. Should we roll the golf ball back? I'm going to put the guys to the test and put them on the spot, so let's get it.
No Putts Given is powered by MyGolfSpy, the most extensive reviews in golf. Before you buy, MyGolfSpy. 9 million readers do it every year. Check us out.
Okay, we've got the guys dancing to our intro music, but we have Adam, Harry, Chris, and Tony. I'm Miranda this week. Guys, how's it going?
Splendid.
It goes.
I said that like I'm not Miranda every week. I'm Miranda, and this week...
I'm Miranda this week. Well, okay.
Next week, you don't know. I'm interested to see what sort of comments we get this week, because we're talking about rolling the golf ball back. Adam, can you give us a quick... I see Harry's face already. Can you give us a quick rundown on what we mean when we say roll the golf ball back?
Well, it's not what we mean, I guess. It's just what people are saying, from the Jack Nicklauses to the Colin Montgomerys to the Paul McGinleys. The number they keep coming to is rolling the ball back 20%, which this week happened because Bryson DeChambeau was dropping bombs out there on the golf course. And the older generation doesn't seem to like that necessarily.
I have the comment here from Colin Montgomery. I'll read it for you. He said, "The game has changed dramatically. It's now brute force and a sand wedge. I'm an advocate of what Jack Nicklaus proposes, a tournament ball for professionals that goes only 80 to 85% as far. The time has come."
Well, here's the debate, in my opinion, is Bryson... Yes, he's bulked up a ridiculous amount and hitting at miles. If you rolled the ball back, he's still going to be out driving everyone by the same amount of distance, because everyone else is going to get that 20% reduction in the ball. He's still going to be doing it.
Well, back up a little bit, I guess. Where do you think this stems from, Harry or Chris or Tony? Like, why do you think these people come out and think this way?
Because they see the tour average going up for the driver's distance, but technically, from the last time I looked, it's not going up that dramatically.
Yeah, that's part of it. I think it's selective a little bit, and we'll hopefully talk about that later on. But, look at the people that are frustrated by the current state of the game, and I see a couple different commonalities. One, they're an older generation of player. I mean, all the different players we talked about now, their heyday was decades ago. Assumably, the game was somewhat different at that point, though. I would argue that, during Jack Nicklaus' time, right, he was one of the longer players out there in tour and had a significant advantage because of how far he could hit the ball. So what I think they see is no different than what we see every generation, where parents don't like their kids' music, right? I mean, has there ever been a turnover generation where it's like, these kids and their music, that loud rock and roll and all that kind of stuff. And
I don't know. My mom's a huge Snoop Dogg fan, so maybe she broke the mold. But
yeah, your mom is awesome, number one. But I think it does two things. One, I think it kind of violates their norms around what they think golf should look like. So Jack Nicklaus has a picture of what golf should look like. Colin Montgomery, Paul McGinley, whomever, in their head, they have an idea of what they think golf should look like. Whether they get to decide that or not, I don't know. But this somehow violates what that looks like to them. And secondly, it is different than what it was like when they played, and they see that being different and in some ways not so good.
Yeah, we talk about like people that get stuck in a certain decade, right? Whether it be a hairstyle or the jeans they wear, like Tiger's pleats or whatever, right? And there's a point in time where some people just say, all right, I'm kind of done learning, and this is where I'm happy in this area with music, style, and everything. And I think for a lot of golfers, Colin Montgomery or whoever, in their mind, like you said, Chris, they have a thought of what golf's traditions were for them on a timeline, But that timeline for them is not the same timeline as it is for Harry Nodwell, right? He's a younger generation. So that is a constant evolution of what golf means to you. But at the end of the day, just remember, Bryson didn't win. I mean, just because he was bombing the ball out there doesn't guarantee you're going to win. I also think one thing to bring this back to the every person listening to this and just think about what this means to you. So I'm going to give you 3 scenarios. If you are Harry Nodwell or someone else that hits the ball 300 yards, you are now going to be hitting the ball 240 yards. Okay? If you're Tony Covey and hit it 250, you are now going to hit it 200 yards, right? And if you are someone else that hits it 200 yards, you're now going to be hitting it 160 yards. Now think about what that game of golf looks like to you the next time you go to play, hitting at those distances, and tell me if that's something you want to do.
I would say no, but I don't think they're arguing to put it on the amateur level. I think it's just the tour. But if they did put it all into all the golf balls back, the game will die. The game will die.
But I think from the manufacturer perspective, you can't just do it on the pro level, because are you only going to make balls for the pros? Because then you lose your audience in terms of, I'm buying this ball because so-and-so plays it. I think that ends up coming back on the manufacturers and they lose money.
Yeah, I think when you look at the possible solutions and which ones cost the most and are the most effective, and it generally comes down to, it's hard for people to they struggle to digest the most simple solutions, right? And sometimes the most simple solutions are the best. And we've talked about it ad nauseum, kind of about growing the grass. And it sounds so stupid and simple that you'd go, there's no way that could possibly solve the problem. And it doesn't solve all the problems, but when you look at all the potential solutions that people have been putting out there for decades now, the difference is this. You can grow the grass and try these things next tournament and find out how these things result. What are the results when you do this? So I don't know. It's just a lot of talk, and it does seem to be, like Chris said, always from the older generation. And it also tells me that they're not willing to evolve, and everything evolves. So you either get with the evolution or you become a dinosaur.
Well, let's put it this way. If we presented it to the professionals, the guys on the tour, what do you think that their opinion on rolling the ball back would be versus the amateurs? Because 99% of golfers are not professional golfers, they're amateurs. So the majority of the game isn't played by professionals. What do you think the difference in opinion would be between the two groups?
It's a good question. I don't know that you're going to get a lot of people really excited about that, at least initially. I think the problem is, like you said, when you kind of examine the different potential solutions, there's major, I would say almost catastrophic pitfalls with a number of the different solutions, and until you can answer a couple very specific questions, it's kind of hard to get beyond that. For example, who is going to manufacture this tournament ball? What OEM wants to step up and do that? Now you got to make a ball with really absolutely no resale possibilities. Nobody in the market is going to actually buy this ball, for no other reason. Maybe some novelty purchases or something like that. But the reality is, who wants to buy that ball? Yes, maybe they have the R&D in place to be able to turn back the clock a little bit. But again, how do you incentivize a company to want to do that? I think that's a huge pitfall. And what's a player's incentive to want to hit it shorter? Why would a tour pro be for this? Like, what tour pro out there is going, oh man, let's just roll this thing back. This is going to be great. Well, theoretically, maybe some of the shorter hitters, if there was a way to kind of graduate it.
Well, if it's say 20%, who knows if it would be 20, 15, or even 10. But you take 20% off a guy who hits it, use the Bryson number 340 now, and 20% off a guy that only hits it 280. Those balls now are a little bit closer together than they were, because the guy on the long end is actually giving up more distance than the guy on the short end, more actual yardage. So, if you are kind of a bottom of the distance table kind of guy, you might be in favor of the rollback, because that'll bring you a little bit closer to the longer hitters. But
well, here's the thing: is Bryson's swinging at 126 miles an hour. If he gets that wrong,
that now,
right? He's swinging it that fast. But if he gets it wrong, just a fraction, that ball was going miles into a bush or miles offline. So if you grow up the rough and you narrow the fairways, you grow up the rough. Does he hit those drivers more often?
Well, that's what I've always said. Like golf is a risk. It's a risk reward thing, right?
Exactly. So if I'm looking at a hole that is just rough that's up to my face and you're never going to find it, I am not taking my driver out. I'm playing to the 150-yard marker, and then I'm going on the green.
Okay, but then you're penalizing somebody that has kind of hacked the game, right? Like they've looked at the numbers and seen that I can do these things over here, or I can do this, and this is going to maybe make me the most money, right? Or chance to win by just getting as strong and hitting it as far as possible. So he's going out and doing that, right? And he said he was going to do it, and the man went out and did it. And so are we going to just be penalizing him by growing the grass? That is the one concern I have, where you go, okay, this guy hits it way down here. I'll grow the grass farther way down there. So he's going to stand on the tee box and have a decision to make. Do I pull out the driver or do I not? And if he doesn't, is that only penalizing the people that have kind of put in the work to game the system, right?
Well, first, I think we need to, because the architecture guys will jump all over us. When we say grow the grass, we're not suggesting turn everything into a jungle or kind of that 4-foot unhittable fescue. It's just enough so that there is a real penalty for being in the rough, right? Put it back to how it was back in the day, if you will, right? The fairways too, for that matter. What does a quarter of an inch look like in terms of the impact on launch and spin and all that stuff? Does that not only reduce some of the roll that we see, but does it also sort of make that second shot, that accuracy piece, if you will, right? Does that make that a little bit more challenging? So that's kind of what we mean. But one of the arguments you hear against these long hitters is like, that takes all the skill out of the game if you're going driver wedge. Well, you know what? If driving the ball a long way wasn't a skill, everybody would do it, right? The fact that Bryson has been able to tack on yards where now he's putting it 40 yards past Rory McIlroy that takes effort, that takes work, that takes skill. So,
but he's also playing a 5-degree driver.
Yeah, but what are you saying, that if everybody plays a 5-degree driver, they're going to hit it as far as Bryson? That's not.
No,
the case.
I'm saying, but if it is a 5, like that's close to long driver lofts, right?
Yeah,
Sure.
he's definitely kind of flirting with that long drive type build without the massive shaft length.
Yeah, do you make that spec? You can't go lower than X amount of degrees.
Well, then again, so why, right? You're sort of, to do that. If you do that, you take the position that we believe as an organization, the USGA R&A, that driving the golf ball a long way is either not a skill or not a skill to be as valued as highly as other skills within the game. And so you're specifically punishing a segment of your players who have worked to develop that skill. And in some cases, right, like some of these guys were born with some ability to swing faster than others, but I mean swing speeds are going up, and it's not just because just luck of the draw. Like, these guys are working on this.
But let me ask you a question with that, right? You take a look at that Colin Montgomery, right? Nothing is stopping him with the things that are available to everyone right now, whether it be super speed golf or the gym or whatever, from working out and attaining the same similar skills to what Bryson is doing, right? Anyone and everyone can do this, and that has been proven with these super speed sticks and some other things, Golf is an interesting sport where you can play it longer. Mm-hmm. So this older generation that's still pros that you don't see in baseball or other sports are still hanging around playing sometimes and flirting with winning some tournaments. But they're sitting there going 50, 60 yards behind these guys, and they're like, man, we got to change this. I don't think that you do, but I also think that get in the gym, do the same thing he's doing. And yes, granted, you're 50, 60 years old, so you might not be able to gain as much, but you can definitely gain some, and you can get some of that back. So why do you think these people that come out like this don't go and try to do the same thing that Bryson's doing?
Because it's hard.
Bingo. But it isn't becoming a professional really tough, and that's what separates the
Right.
best pros from just the pros. They put in it's hard.
that was sort of what I was thinking when we were talking about this topic earlier. I couldn't get past the idea that it just kind of, I might get bad comments for this, but it sounds like poor sports. I mean, just be better, hit the ball longer, and if you can't, figure out something that combats it. Adam, I told you earlier, it sounds to me, if we put it in the perspective of other sports, it sounds like somebody getting mad at a football kicker for being able to nail 61-yard field goals and then saying, well, okay, we know that you can consistently hit 61, so we're going to take and add 10 yards onto every one of the field goals you take. That's penalizing somebody for figuring it out, for being a skilled and good player.
Well, and the other piece is, have we even gotten to the point yet where we've all agreed on a universal set of facts? I don't think we have. And I think when we get phrases like, oh, it's becoming driver and wedge, it's becoming a pitch and putt, that's categorically untrue. When you talk to guys like Lou Stagner and some of these guys who are deep into the statistics, what's becoming clear to me is people are cherry picking specific incidents or examples of things to help fulfill that narrative. Guys aren't going driver wedge. There's a variety of different clubs being used to play into par fours. I mean, argue whatever you want, but I think you watch any PGA Tour tournament, there's a lot of skill involved. I mean, are you going to tell me that Colin Morikawa, not a very skilled ball striker? If you watched this last week and said, yeah, not a lot of skill involved there. Really? I mean, I think a tremendous amount of skill is involved in doing what they do, including the fact that driving the ball a long way is a skill. Putting is a skill. Had Bryson putted better, yeah, he probably would have won. Very easily could have won, but he didn't. That's part of the whole package. And so we haven't even agreed on how far amateurs hit the ball. We haven't even agreed on really how far tour players hit the ball, because what you tend to see on the weekend, right? When do most people watch golf, if they even watch golf? Maybe on the weekend.
4 o'clock Sunday afternoon.
4 o'clock Sunday afternoon, right? And so think about this. In an average tour field, you got 144 to 156 players, right? Okay, half of them are gone after the first 2 days because they didn't make the cut that week. These are still world-class players, right? These are the people that are the top 1/10 of 1%, whatever in the world. All right, so now on the weekend, you got that half, right? Somewhere between 70 and 80 with ties. And you're watching the last 4 to 6 of those people that made the cut, and we're seeing a Bryson and you're seeing a Rory, etc. That is not at all representative of the guy that missed the cut, that averages 270 off the tee, that shot 77, 79, and has missed 6 out of the last 10 cuts and is scrapping it, right? Scrapping around. That player might win. That player might be a Ryan Moore. That player might be somebody who has won on tour multiple times. But, man, if they can get hot for 2 or 3 weeks, that's where they can make their whole year. But this idea that we're seeing 1 or 2 players on the weekend and people really honing in on Bryson, the fact they're only really talking about Bryson tells me that we don't have a complete picture that we're even agreeing on right now.
Essentially what you said is we're only seeing the best of the best, so we have a selective sample of people that we're complaining about, when really statistically the rest of the golf community is not suffering from this perceived problem.
I mean, you had Barry Bonds.
Well, you could also argue, right, that the guys that we're seeing are typically not exclusively, not always, but typically among the longest hitters on the tour, and so there absolutely is a correlation, certainly between driving distance and earnings.
But that's not new. That's not new. Length has always been an advantage. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you penalize Bryson for hitting the ball, for dominating the distance, you could have done the same thing with Tiger Woods when he was winning all those majors and say, all right, you're going to start 5 over to give everyone else a chance. Like, it's a same kind of concept, but just related to something different.
You're choosing one discipline of a multidisciplined sport and saying, this is the one we need to cap. Again, there is concern, and it has become a legitimate concern that this new run of distance is obsoleting these classic venues. But I keep going to, it's really a shame if it gets to the point with driving distance where Pebble Beach, for example, is no longer a suitable tour venue. Okay, that sucks, I guess, but it had a good run, and guess what? You know what? It's still available for the other 99.99% of golfers plus who play this game. So, it's not like because because Bryson has added massive distance, Pebble Beach has to shut down and nobody gets to play there anymore. It's just a simple case of, hey, you know what? The game has evolved, and so the venues have to evolve as well, and there's still going to be fantastic tournament venues. And maybe it's heartless, maybe it shows an irreverence for the traditions of the game, but if some of these venues have to go away because golfers have become more athletic, more powerful, smarter in how they apply data to their craft, I'm okay with that. I am okay with that. If the tour has to play on a circuit of 8,000 yard courses, I'm okay with that. Let's have tour venues, and like I said, if Pebble Beach is just for amateurs and recreational golfers now, and you don't see it on TV except for maybe some pro-am thing every now and again, I'm okay with that. I'm okay, and this will not be popular. I'm okay if we can't play St. Andrews anymore. That venue is still awesome. It's still timeless. It still exists for golfers who can make the pilgrimage, if you will, and play that course. And if it just happens that it's obsoleted by athleticism, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, and I think something you point out there, Tony, that again, this goes back to a Lou Stagner thing I saw and really agreed with this idea. People say, oh, distance is becoming more important. It's not. We just have ways now to understand why distance is important. It was still important 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, but the tools and metrics and things we have to be able to measure things, Mark Brody, right? Strokes gained. If you had strokes gained 30, 40 years ago, it would have changed the whole narrative. It's like saying, oh man, protein, having a balanced diet is so much more important in 2020. Well, no, it's not, but we know about people and their metabolisms and how that impacts maybe food you should eat and shouldn't eat and all the foods that I do eat.
I just
right?
think
Like,
this is
you
hilarious
got to bring it back to food, man.
Every time it goes to food.
Every time. But it's true.
The man that metabolizes more ice cream faster than any human I've ever met.
So it's kind of like the older generation being upset with the keto diet.
Well,
Chris don't know what the hell keto is.
I know. I like how he brushed over that.
Excuse me, did you say Cheeto diet?
yeah, I thought you said Cheeto.
No.
I love the Cheeto diet.
I love the Cheeto diet.
The puffs, the little popcorn
Keto.
ones, it's all good.
No, but in what other sport is it irreverent to be okay with things that are 100 years old being obsolete? Like, why do those have to be the same thing? Wrigley Field got an update, right? They had to update different things at different venues across. I mean, in what other sport do you look back 100 years and the people pining for, NFL stadiums from whatever going, oh man, you're just irreverent. You don't appreciate the traditions of the game. Well, would you move into a house that was built in 1910 right now, trade your house right now for one in 1910 because you care about
the architecture?
Yeah, you like the architecture? Great. Okay. Why does that have to be irreverent? Why do you even have to apologize for potentially being irreverent for something that's 100 years old?
Well, I think the skill of the game is very different than the traditions of the game. I think if you're talking the traditions of the game, those can still people can still take a part of that while understanding that the game itself is advancing. Like Wrigley Field's a tradition. The Ivy Walls are a tradition. It's part of it. The Ivy Walls are still there, but that doesn't mean that guys aren't skyrocketing home runs way past it.
The baseball analogy is really interesting because for as much as golf tends to almost get lost in its tradition and is viewed as kind of a slow, plodding endeavor to a degree where change happens slowly, in terms of technology and understanding sort of everything that goes into swinging faster, golf is very much at the forefront of that. And so we're starting to see it trickle down into other sports. So, I mean, it doesn't get talked about as a metric, right? But fundamentally, swing speed is a huge component of baseball as well. And it seems to me almost inevitable that swing speed across the major league is going to go up as well. And, it'll start with the younger guys coming out of the minors as these start the same types of programs that Bryson has leveraged to gain swing speed with his golf swing. That's going to trickle into baseball as well. And, there will be conversations about moving fences and perhaps even rolling back the ball and things like that. So, to a degree, as much as I'm against any sort of rollback, I think golf is ultimately going to be the sport that eventually, or that leads what will become a larger discussion in the sporting world moving forward.
Yeah, so that brings me to a good question, I think, and that is like, how many guys do you think now, after seeing what he did in that tournament, are going to be following that path
How many
pretty
guys were in
quickly?
that tournament?
Yeah, 156, call it.
Yeah, so
144, maybe 156.
So 143 because Bryson already did it. I mean, yeah, it's absolutely crazy just how fast he's done it and how effective it's been. And when Bryson signed with Cobra going on what 4 or 5 years ago, whatever it was, those guys were insistent. They were like, look, he's gonna win. It may take him a while to get rolling, but he's gonna win, and he's gonna win often. And I think that would have proved to be true if nothing has changed. You look at some of the stuff we've seen with his foresight, impact patterns, and things like that. The guy is arguably the best ball striker on the tour.
It's like a robot.
Yeah.
In terms of making consistent contact every time, hitting the center of the club face every time. So he was going to win, and he was going to win a lot, I think. And now kind of if if there's nothing to be done about distance, and certainly there's nothing to be done in the short term, look out. I think you're going to see a guy who wins more than a lot and is top 5, top 10 week after week after week because of the newfound distance advantage. And again,
He could be the new Tiger Woods.
there's nothing unique that I'm aware of in Bryson's DNA that gives him that advantage, right? Where, something in in his chromosomal makeup allowed him to be super.
Well, I think there is. I think there actually is.
Well, it's mental though. It's
Exactly.
But physically, he's not doing anything that anybody else on the tour shouldn't be able to do.
He's willing to take chances and not care what people think about in regards to the things that he's done, whether it be the flag stick or this or whatever it's been. The things he said he was going to do, he did, and almost all of them have improved his game. And, you sit there and hear a lot of people mock him on the internet.
Oh, he's an easy target sometimes.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, what did I say? How many people are going to be doing what he just did? If anybody wants to pick up what he disproved can be done, they're all going to be doing it, including Colin Montgomery. So maybe. I don't know if those biceps
He's already pretty big.
Let's put it in this perspective. Harry, I'm curious. Put yourself 30 years down the road. Could you see yourself buzzing around in your golf cart complaining about the state of golf in the future today, or do you adapt?
I think you just adapt. I mean, you can't say back in my day this was better because you live in a different time. Like, I think you just evolve with like the world does. You just evolve and you pick up where you want to get off. I mean, I know technology is changing and shoes are now helping you hit it further. Clubs obviously everyone's getting more tuned in and dialed into their game, so they're becoming better. It's just an evolution of the game.
It is. It might have been Sasho McKenzie. I'm trying to think who kind of answered the question, but what does kind of like the ultimate golfer, the golfer of the future look like? And it's essentially like a long drive competitor with the skill of a PGA professional.
Yeah.
Around the rest of the golf course. And I think, Bryson is now over 190 miles an hour. I wonder, be interesting to talk to him and see what he thinks his functional ball speed ceiling is, right? Before you get to the point where, it's a gear I don't need or a gear that's gonna take me off the road. But, right about now, if Bryson says, yeah, I think I can get to 200 by September, I'd be like, I believe you. Yeah. So
That's the interesting point, is how this changes the landscape, and that's what the ruling bodies deal with all the time, right? Is how much should they change things? Can they change things? Would a tournament ball help solve any of the perception issues that they have with some people? And at the end of the day, I don't know that it does, right? Because when you get guys like Bryson, guys that are willing to think outside of every box, he's always been an outlier. He's kind of cracked the code, right? And we're going to see more and more people Brysonify their games, I think, a little bit, and that's just that's going to be the reality moving forward.
So what I'm hearing collectively is that it's not a problem yet.
Well, I mean, it's clearly rapidly becoming a problem when you've got a guy like if you ran down the list of guys who hit the golf ball too far, if you're inclined to make such a list, right? I think inarguably Rory would have been on that list, and you look at when he played with Bryson, the difference between those balls, as we said, upwards of 40 yards. Bryson has taken this to a new level, has taken the conversation to a new level almost overnight. And so if you were inclined to be against the rollback based on where guys like Rory and Dustin Johnson and Bubba Watson were hitting it, it's fair to look at what Bryson's doing and maybe reopen the conversation again a little bit. But again, my position is, look, the consequence is you lose classic venues, right? There are courses being built, and I know people worry about water and the environmental impacts, but you only need but how many golf courses a year there, how many in any year that can support the pro game. So, like I said, I'm good with some of these venues getting obsoleted, because as much as I enjoy watching a beautifully executed shot into a green, whether it's shaped or sort of working with the slope of the green and having that degree of course knowledge, I turned on the TV Saturday to watch Bryson hit the shit out of the golf ball, and when there was no airtime for Bryson, I turned off the television because I was no longer interested. So, yeah, there is, and perhaps it is because he's now reached this level very quickly where it is the extreme from a distance perspective, and he's so much longer than everybody else, and that to me makes golf as close to must-see TV as it's ever going to be, with the exception of something like the Masters or another major, possibly a Ryder Cup. It has the potential to make some of these events that, if we're being honest, most golfers don't care about, worth watching.
Yeah, my question is define problem. You say, is it a problem? So depends on how you define what problem is.
I think we need to hear from the tour pros themselves and think, is it a problem with Bryson hitting this far? Like, I want to hear everyone's opinion. Do they think that it should be rolled back, or just keep it how it is? Like, they're the ones that are playing the game at the end of the day. It's not the Colin Montgomerys that are playing in the tour. It's the guys on tour.
That's a tough one too, right? So if you're going to ask the people that now he's blowing it past 30, 40 yards.
Right.
Let's roll him back.
Yeah, can we roll back the Bryson?
We don't need a tournament ball. We just need a Bryson ball. Like, that's ultimately what you're getting.
I mean, what do you do? Find a guy that's a really, really good putter and say, God, man, that guy got way too good at putting.
Well, that's exactly what I was thinking about, Chris, right? So like driving is the equivalent to like Sammy Sosa and Maguire, right? So it's must-see TV, it's the Bash Brothers, it's all this stuff, right? But what would they do if some guy was just lights out putting and he tried some new claw grip, right? And he was 10 tournaments in a row just lighting it up.
It was like Jordan Spieth when he was a good putter.
Yeah, so do you think they're going to be going, hey, we've got to do something with that ball he's putting with or that putter he has? No, because it's not as polarizing as a 360-yard bomb off the tee. It's a 6-foot putt 100 times in a row,
Putting really well doesn't obsolete a golf course, right? You sort of, I don't think there's not going to be like, oh my God, this guy is just nailing these putts, so we can only play golf courses that have more challenging undulations, right? I don't think anybody's going to have that conversation, and so it's the distance one is easy to pick on because it runs the risk of making a course unsuitable for professional tournament play, which again I am fine.
So
with.
is that the concern over competition? Is that we're losing courses that are dear to our hearts rather than the other guys can't keep up with somebody who drives this far?
Well, again, the two arguments, right? It's obsoleting classic venues, and it eliminates the skill from the game. And so I think the first one of those is inarguably true, and you just have to decide whether or not you're okay with it. And the second one, again, Bryson put on an absolute driving show, and he didn't win, right?
Right.
Daniel Berger wasn't on anybody's radar until he won, is kind of how that worked. And so
I didn't hear his name come up until they said he won the tournament.
So it's distance is an advantage, but distance has always been an advantage. But the longest guy in the field doesn't automatically win. You still even if it's with a wedge, you still have to hit a really good wedge shot, and you still need to make the putt. Otherwise, you're going to make par. Driving itself is a multifaceted skill. It's one thing to hit the ball really, really far. It's another to hit it really, really far and what I would describe as playably straight. And again, you can tune the golf course and adjust your fairway width and grow the rough a little bit, just a little bit, if you think that this is a problem worth solving. But for the average golfer, I can hit it 300 yards, but it's 300 yards dead left into somebody's backyard. So there's, again, I'm the extreme example and others like me are extreme examples, but there is a difference between distance and functional distance. And to succeed on the PGA Tour, you have to be functional in your distance.
Jamie Sadlowski, right? I mean, he can motor the ball down there 400 yards. He's not winning.
I believe he's longer than Harry. Yes.
Oh yeah, he is.
He's not winning PGA tournaments right now, right? So it's not always, and he's a good golfer. So there's more skill involved than just hitting the ball long.
Well, and is anybody saying that we can't play courses like this weekend, right? We have RBC Heritage in Hilton Head, right? Different course. It's going to be more of that target golf, if you want to call it that. Marion, right? You have courses like that. So just as much as we're saying maybe it obsoletes certain venues, maybe it requires other types of venues where it requires a skill.
Right, like these tree-lined fairways, right? Where if you're a little offline, there's something that's gonna snag your ball and either kick it somewhere you don't want it or drop it at somebody's feet, 150 yards short of where you were hoping.
Right. We struggled a little bit in the last Ryder Cup in France, right? A lot of that had to do with course setup. Well, yeah, we struggle a little bit. So again, you can do all these things, and I get that it may quote unquote obsolete old courses, but man, again, what else is 100 years old that isn't obsolete?
To what extent are there venues that aren't ideal if your primary main skill is a long drive? Can it be a disadvantage on any venues?
We may find out this weekend.
Yeah, exactly like that. If you're playing on links golf courses, you could be hitting it too far. They're rolling into thick rough, and then you can't find the ball. So it depends. Like if it's firm and fast, if you get a straight hole and you get it downwind, yeah, you can hit it a long way. But in a links golf course like me growing up, they are tight, and if you get outside of the fairway, you're in thick rough that is like heather, and you can't move it. You just have to hack out sideways. So it's both ways.
Okay. Well, I think that was a good discussion. We've got some potential solutions, but if it becomes a bigger problem, we'll be back here talking about it again. And actually, I'm interested to see what everybody who listens thinks, so let us know in the comments, and maybe we can dig into some of that later. But I also want to talk about this week. Tony, I'm coming to you because I was hoping you were going to be wearing your square hat. Do you have it close? There it is.
Somehow it matches the mustache.
It does.
I mean, I can't see myself, guys, but I can only assume that this hat is the ultimate compliment to the mustache.
You don't have a van with dark windows, dude.
I have actually a van with no windows. AT texted me earlier. He watched last week's episode. He's like, nice stash. And then I'm like, hell yeah, it definitely kind of gives off a windowless van kind of vibe. But he asked me how it's going over with the wife, and I was like, she doesn't love it, but where's she gonna go right now? So
we call that a lack of replacement options.
There's a lot of flexibility you have with your spouse when you're in quarantine.
Well, the reason I asked was because this week the Squares shoes have been at the forefront of everybody's mind, and I want to know your thoughts. Harry, we tested shoes just recently. Were the Squares a part of the test?
Yes, they had two models.
How'd they do?
Middle of the pack.
Okay.
Average.
They are. How do I put it?
Okay.
How do I put it? They are. I love certain things about them, and then I don't like certain things about them.
Okay. I have to say, looking at the ones you have, Tony, they don't look as blatantly or obviously square as I thought they were going to.
Wait until you get them on.
Maybe because the hat is so square.
Yeah, the hat definitely kind of
offsets the shoe squareness.
The shoes actually have a little bit of curve, a little bit of contour as you move out of that toe box, where this thing is just like, yeah, man, we are square AF.
So here's my question. The square shoes finish middle of the pack. Is square the new shape of innovation in golf?
I don't know. I think it's too early to say. I think they've got some. I think they've got a cool thing with having the right amount of lateral movement. That might be it.
No,
I
is the
don't know.
square toe going to be around 10 years from now?
Yeah, but that's what I mean. The only way to get that potential lateral movement is maybe getting a square toe box on there.
Can you make improvements on the shoe that they have out now and keep the square toe and have it be a good shoe? Is there room for improvement?
Yeah.
You know, so Harry has obviously the insight on the actual testing piece. I have not. Next time I play, which I hope will be later this week or certainly this weekend, I'm going to wear this shoe. I haven't tried it on the golf course. I've worn it around the house a little bit. I tend to have wider feet. I don't tend to. I always have wider feet. They don't change. So I have a wider foot, and I do find that
Miranda this week.
I do find that it is. You know, I do like the wider toe box, and limited to that part of the discussion, they're not the first to do that. Remember when
Nike
True Links wear when
Right.
True Links came out, right? That was kind of the first True Links wear, which some people kind of laughed off as clown shoes, right? Had like that really wide toe box, and they were super comfortable. I mean, that wasn't the most stable shoe, but it wasn't supposed to be. So this has, as Harry said, there's some stability that has some potential there. Stylistically, I think it's fair to say it could use a little bit of work. And
It's perfect for Barba.
That was my next question. Barba at the PGA show gathered us all up and said, "I have to go show you this," and took us on a field trip to the Squares booth. And I'll give their owner credit. He was very enthusiastic and loves his product, and Barba loved it just as much.
Well, and some of the stuff they're saying, right, with the square toe helping with alignment over the ball, I guess, maybe, but most of the golf teachers I've worked with tell you to flare your toes. So, do we need to, do we need a rhomboid shape?
Triangle.
Well, potentially it helps a lot in putting if you do line up square to the target and you square to the ball. That's just another element to help you
Interesting.
align.
I mean, I'm willing to try it and see kind of perceptually how I feel about that.
But the issues that I had with it, it's one of the heaviest shoes that we tested. It reminded me of an old FootJoy classic that had the wooden sole on it, which made it that much bulkier.
Oh yeah,
heavier.
when you look at the breakdown of how the shoe is built from a component level, there's a lot going on there, which adds to the weight. Where as you take the Adidas Boost material, and it is so light and so comfortable, and they achieve that so much more simply than when you look at the breakdown of how the square shoe is built. It's pretty impressive, to see how Adidas has done it, comparatively speaking to squares.
Yeah, and I think that's an excellent point, because if you kind of go back iterations of shoes going back years, really, one of the things that's changed significantly, right, is that weight has continued to come down. And so in that respect, well, you do have this sort of modern take on design that is potentially innovative, right? It's definitely different from a material standpoint.
It's tough, right? When you come into an industry, right, first year, and you haven't had that knowledge of evolution like Adidas has had, where they brought these materials from different sports and all these things. What seems revolutionary that first year you come out with, other companies have been working on for such a long time. Let's say you have one really good component in your shoe, right? That you come out with, your brand new company, you've got one really cool feature. The other companies just look around and go, well, we've got everything else figured out. We'll just take your square toe thing and put it in our next shoe, right? So it's tough for a company to break in and know all the ins and outs of how to make a great golf shoe, where we've already got companies that make great golf shoes that couldn't just take your idea and basically implement it into their already great golf shoe.
Well, yeah, and I think is it the next thing in golf shoes, Miranda? Kind of back to your question, if you're still Miranda this week.
This week, yes.
This week you're Miranda. Maybe not. I could easily see if there is something to this, which I believe there is. Like, if there's anything Squares has done, they've done a lot of research, right? From the biomechanics standpoint, like very intentional around how they created the shoe. Each part of the shoe has a certain function, and they kind of really honed in on an objective for each different piece of the shoe. There's probably some things there that really do work. I think you may see that show up in some other shoes potentially, and if so, if there's anything to the Square thing, yeah, maybe Adidas does pick that up. Maybe somebody else picks that up as a version of that.
It's been done though. It's been done. Nike did it back years ago. I think early 2000. I think they did.
Well, they didn't really sell it as a story necessarily.
But they didn't. But they did create a shoe with a square toe.
It really wasn't for the same purpose at all. They had the white saddle that came down the middle, which gave it a squared version, squared look. But ultimately, it was a super narrow toe box, right? I mean, it crammed your toes in.
Well, you get the square toe. It's kind of this
Yes.
measurement here from over
There
here to
you go.
here is where you get that really the difference. And it's like you really feel like you can just take your toes and go, yeah, I got lots of room here. It's spread out a little bit, like when your wife leaves town for the weekend or forever, and you can just just spread out in the bed. It's that kind of feeling.
Tony, did you when you're walking, do you feel like you're having that ripple effect from like heel, midsection to toe, or is it heel, rest of your foot?
It does kind of it feels a little when you're walking around, and again, I've only done it around the house, feels a little high-heeled, if you will.
That's exactly what I had in the notes.
Like your heel is locked in.
But it feels like it's a little bit small, at least on my foot, and it pushed my heel up slightly. So therefore, it didn't quite sit perfectly. Now, when testing, I did find out that I wasn't quite with the right size, so I requested a size down, and it did help with comfort and stability.
Yeah, they do. They do run a hair large.
Yes, half a size big is what I had.
Well, regardless of what we think, it seems like the square trend at the very minimum, at least with squares themselves, is starting to catch on a little bit because Sir Nick Faldo has jumped on as an ambassador for squares. And Harry, you actually talked to Sir Nick yesterday.
Yes.
What brought him to the square revolution? Threw
So
all circles out the window.
he
and squares now.
he said that he was doing some exercises outside, and he had his golf shoes on at that point, and he didn't like how he wasn't balanced or anything like that. So he apparently jumped on the internet, typed in the best stable shoe, and up popped Squares. So he got onto his agent, who contacted Squares, the owner of Squares, and sent a couple down, and he loved them. He's been walking on the beach with them, apparently, walking around the house, walking all day on them.
Do they make spikeless models?
It's that 24 karat gold cash money right there.
That'll do it.
So yeah, this is like, I don't know if it's legit, if he really, really enjoys them or not, because he has had a little bit of a history of getting endorsement deals and then going away from them a few years later. So
Well, that's pretty much true of everybody who's
yes,
achieved
but
any
he has-
degree of status in
but he has a
professional
lot.
golf. So
He has a lot.
This kind of begs the question, and I want to go around the room. Is there anything that if someone was paying you the right amount of money that you would not jump on to endorse?
So what is a product we would say no to no matter how much money they offered
I
us?
mean,
Exactly.
there's so
Yeah.
many products we say no to. So it's
Well, let's say you're a professional golfer, though, Tony, and a company comes to you and they say, we're going to give you $5 million, and it's so bad you have to say no. What is it?
anything Aaron Oberhoser endorses.
C3 eye wedge.
I mean,
Hey, that thing works.
although I joke, but we know that actually can help some people. So
Yeah.
I don't.
What about the elevator? Would you use the elevator for $1 million a year?
The golf I think it's the golf elevator is an interesting one because it's not a product that's bad or fails at its intended design.
Just
It's just
unnecessary.
a case of I don't really need this, but
What about stay active?
Well, get back to me in a few weeks on that one. We'll see. Like that could either be hell yes, I'm sign me up right now, or no amount of money. We'll see how that turns out.
So far, that sponsorship's free.
Yeah, like I think about like a ridiculous, like an absolutely ridiculous, like apparel deal where like people are just gonna be looking at you and saying things
This
the
hat.
whole time like that, or like
Maybe this hat is the answer. To
What about the shirt that Phil wore?
the mizzen and main one, like the
Mizzen,
dress
yeah,
shirt.
the main.
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking that or the one that
I'd wear a comfortable shirt.
Do you remember the one Ian Poulter wore one time? It was like a gold.
The gold.
Yes.
It was like shiny
yeah.
and net. So like if you said, "Hey, you got to wear this," and it's like hot and not breathable and like cotton pants and whatever, like, dang, I don't know if I could do that.
What if a healthy company like wanted to sponsor you, like
rabbit food?
like a vegan meat?
Oh,
What about Halo ice cream?
yeah.
Halo ice cream.
Halo ice cream that has like 90 calories.
Vegan ice cream. Oh,
that's tough.
tofu,
man.
Chris. Like instead of your luncheon meat, they send you tofu.
Would you be the brand ambassador for tofu burger?
No,
Nope.
no. I would say this: it'd be a big price tag for me to go.
Yeah,
and
I would have a hard time endorsing any food I wouldn't eat myself. Like that would be.
All right.
that-
So Haribo, would you do Haribo?
yeah, it's.
If you had to go out there and say Haribo is the best gummies
If I
in
had
the
to,
world,
no,
folks.
I could not in good faith say that Haribo is the best gummy. The Albanese is the best gummy.
Yeah. This meat, this fake meat tastes just like meat. No, it doesn't. Can't do
I
that.
could never endorse a green apple Skittle. They're
What?
the worst. They are the worst in the bag of Skittles. You know how it used to be lime and they still call it the original Skittles? It's not, because green apple is not part of the original pack and it ruins the rest of the flavors. Over it.
Tell us how you really feel.
I feel enough that I wrote Skittles a letter and they never responded.
Ooh.
You might be insane.
Green apple ruins the rest of the flavors.
Like you-
you
that's-
can't combine it anymore.
You are way down the rabbit hole when you're writing to Skittles to complain about green apple.
I want to know what Adam, what wouldn't you sell out for? $5 million?
You know, when you say 5 million, I think, you know what?
There's a lot. That's too
Nothing. There's nothing I wouldn't sell.
I think the list is pretty long for me.
Adam's more principled than the rest of us.
I would definitely say the Squares hat. I would say Croc golf shoes.
Ooh.
I could get behind Croc golf shoes within sort of the limited constraints of for backyard practice. Like,
What about glitter bag of dick bombs, Tony? Could you endorse those?
I think I've become the unofficial spokesperson as it is.
Yeah. It's Tony's bag of dicks.
But again, the problem there is the quality of the gummy.
Ooh,
Albanese.
I've got a good one for Tony. Tony, if a shit golf ball company called you and said, you're a pro golfer, you got to play this ball, and you got to go out there and say that our quality control is the best, and you've been cutting them open, they're not centered, they're thick cores, I mean, they're made out of recycled tires, sometimes
Offered
the
you
balls
20
are
mil.
different. $20 million. You taking it?
No, Ted might, but
What if they said, you have to play this ball, but our one requirement is that you cannot cut it open?
how do you not in that? Like, you just have to. Like, as soon as you say that.
Harry, did you give yours of what you wouldn't play?
I don't know. I haven't really thought about it.
Lame response. You have to know.
Like, dude, you are trying to become a pro golfer, right? Like, you need to start thinking this stuff through and be ready. You never know what opportunity's coming.
What about like a hat with like erectile dysfunction stuff all over it?
Wear it with pride. Yeah, I'd take mine. I don't care.
I'm just saying.
Hey Tony, if you invent the umbrella with a gutter, I will be that person.
Oh yeah. There you go.
I don't know, Harry. I have a bone to pick because if someone offered you $5 million, you might get a divorce
Ooh.
if you didn't at least think about it.
Ooh, then you get it all.
Exactly, that's my point. I would divorce and then sign the papers after.
I said when your wife leaves for the weekend or forever.
You have to at least consider it.
I would consider it, divorce you, and then sign after.
But anyway, back to the original thought. Harry, Barbara's working on that interview with Sir Nick Faldo now, right?
It's published. It's already
Oh,
published.
it's published.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
It was good. Barbara obviously is a true professional when it comes to interview, and he has all these questions, and I had, hey, can you knight me? And he said no, he could not do that. But
You do understand he's not actually the queen, right?
yes, but I'm pretty sure he has a sword back at home, so we could pretend to knight.
That's fair.
I don't know that he gets like a guest pass. You know, like he gives to somebody.
You know what he does
It's
get
not Disney
though?
World.
In St. George's, he does have a coat of arms hanging up above in St. George's, which is pretty cool because me and Miranda went there 2 years ago, and
Yeah.
you can see all the knights that got knighted are all up on top in the rafters, and if they're deceased and they haven't changed it, they turn their heads around. So those cool little traditions. So Sir Nick Faldo's up there in St. George's with his coat of arms. Nothing to do with Squares, but yeah. I think here's my dilemma. If Squares did better in the test, I could see where he is coming from. Right now, because I've tested so many shoes back to back and head to head. My viewpoint is not going to change at this present time.
So unless though my pushback there would be unless Sir Nick Faldo showed you his foot, right? Perhaps he does kind of have that
He might have
wider
that
foot
anomaly,
that just kind of fits right in there. So that, like I said, that's kind of what intrigues me. Stylistically, maybe not exactly my thing. Although I do like some of the little details, like the square eyelets and things like that, and then like even on the laces.
Yeah, the
like
laces
these
is
little
pretty cool
square
because
patterns,
it holds into place.
Yeah, so there's some stuff here that was well thought out, perhaps more so than the hat I'm wearing. So yeah, it's worth trying.
Tony, I'm curious if we sent you something like if we sent you shoulder pads to put in your polo there, would you like go for a full square outfit? Would you wear the shoes,
Like
the
just-
shoulder pads, really boxy like
Like
straight
looking
line
like a
pants?
David Bowie video from the
Yeah.
from the 80s.
Oh my God! Long time ago, Tony, Ricky Fowler was just on the scene, and Tony and I put together this whole. He was all orange. He had long hair, and Tony had this character that he was going to bring out called Sticky Fuller. That basically Ricky Fowler had stolen his whole look, and Tony had orange shirt, orange pants, orange shoes, orange hat, orange bag, Cheetos in the bag. He had it all. He had a white wig to go with it, I think.
It was like kind of like the Ricky cut from back in the day.
Yeah.
Pics or it didn't happen.
I know.
You have pictures.
It didn't happen. It came close. We just had a little trouble.
Well, I don't know. Let's take the over under. Do we think the square toe lasts 10 years?
10? No.
5?
I would say 3.
I think it's going to last 3 years with Squares because I think they have some financial backing that could get them through 3 years. But no, I mean,
unless they did something else with the shoe, in a drastic way that makes it more appealing, but still gets the benefits.
If it had become a big thing in some other sport or something where more people had become accustomed to seeing that look, it's just so different looking when you see it that oftentimes different is looked at as a gimmick in sports, especially in golf.
I mean, go back to again when True Linkswear came out, right? It was kind of the same thing. Like, oh, this is weird and it's different, and this is never going to catch on. And that the company isn't the same, and it's gone through some iterations and evolutions and things like that. They're still around, and from what we can tell, doing reasonably well. So I'm saying there's a chance.
You know the difference there though? When they came out, they had some marketing around that, like zero drop for one, which was big trend at the time. But two, when you put them on the very first time, like in the PGA show when they launched, everybody that they said, all right, go walk around with them, they were the most comfortable thing in that space that you had ever felt for a golf shoe. And two, they had some style to them. So they had a lot of other things going for them.
I wouldn't say that the first kind of Gen 1 True Linkswear had a whole ton of style to it.
I still have them. I mean, I thought they were pretty slick.
I mean, kind of like an interesting kind of look, I guess. And that's, different, maybe kind of a cool
Barba
vibe.
versus younger demographic, I guess, was the difference.
Yeah.
You could put Barber in a pair of clogs and he would still think they're great.
And that's, I mean, you can go back to within 2 to 3 years of each other, kind of the two shoe brands that launched at the show to a degree and built up a lot of buzz early were True Linkswear, which again still around, still doing reasonably well, and then remember Kicker. Right? And that one didn't last, and to my mind the difference there was that the True Linkswear was insanely comfortable, and the Kicker shoes were kind of the opposite of that, right? They kind of looked cool and had kind of like that skater vibe to them, but they weren't particularly comfortable. So, just don't discount comfort, right? Skechers sell shoes, so if these things are insanely comfortable for walking 18 holes, and particularly for wide feet, and can show some benefit in the swing, right? That's an interesting kind of angle where, Faldo mentioned picking up some head speed, things like that. It's
people might get that.
If the story is real, if it's real and it's quantifiable and you notice the difference, then there's a chance. But if it's just another shoe, particularly if it doesn't evolve and become more stylish and lighter weight, then
I think Chris said it. We were talking about the Skechers shoe, and he's like, super comfortable shoe. Anybody's willing to invest some money on a really comfortable golf shoe, right, and see how it works. The problem with the Squares versus the Skechers is comfortable for $60-$70, and Squares is pretty comfortable for $200. It's a big difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's that's the thing. You're willing to most people are going to be willing to spend $80 and take a shot that a shoe is going to be comfortable and meet their expectations. Where when that's when you talk about the Skechers and the Inesis, which again stylistically, right, to keep coming back to that, don't necessarily have the look that golfers want to see. You're willing to forego a little bit of that for an $80 price point. But if you're competing on price anyway with Adidas and FootJoy and some of these more established golf shoe footwear brands, then I think it's fair to say it does become a little bit of a tougher sell.
Time will tell.
Yeah, before we go to, I know we don't have the exact date, but we have been getting a lot of emails and inquiries about the driver swing speed breakdown, and we will be publishing that very soon. There was some delay because of some pandemic things, obviously the coronavirus, and a couple other things that we wanted to do data-wise a little bit differently this year, but that will be coming in the next probably week to 2 weeks. So just an update for everybody.
We will be releasing the Mallet article here very soon as well. So that's all completed. We are crunching the data, and Tony has it in his hands now, so he's going to do his normal plodding through it.
Feed it to the machine, see what gets spit out the other end.
So that's coming. We've started testing here. Philip Bishop is our new director of hard goods, and he's plowing through the player's distance as we speak. So more tests to come.
All right. Well, I would introduce you guys to our new pup, but she's actually stirring a little bit. Puma, come here.
The new MyGolfSpy mascot.
It's the only time I've ever woken her up because it's great when she sleeps. But this is Puma. She's driving us nuts, but in the best way, right?
It's literally
so
like
you have two of those in your house now, huh, Miranda?
Yeah, exactly. Say, that's it. We out.
We out, dog.
Give me some treats.